Try mine. The words cut across the firing range just as Maya Cross lifted a fresh paper target from the steel rack. She turned slowly, one hand still holding the target sheet by its corner, the other resting against the weathered wooden frame where a dozen clean circles waited to be punched through. Behind her, the afternoon sun burned low over the naval training compound, throwing long shadows across the gravel lanes and the concrete firing line. The SEAL who had spoken stood 20 yards away with a rifle in his hands. Lieutenant Cole Ramsey was smiling. Not the friendly kind of smile. Not the kind men wore when they respected what they were about to offer. It was the smile of someone who had already decided the outcome before the test began. Around him, 6 other operators paused their gear checks. A few looked over from their benches. One stopped loading magazines. Another nudged the man beside him with his elbow, like the range had suddenly become entertainment. Maya said nothing. She only looked at the rifle, then at Ramsey. "Come on," he said, lifting it slightly. "You keep staring at our targets like you know something we don't. Try mine." A soft laugh moved through the line. Maya lowered the fresh target onto the stack. "Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below, and if you believe in courage and respect, hit like and subscribe. These stories inspire change, and we're glad you're here." Now, back to Maya. She had been on the range since 0500. Before the SEAL team arrived, before the first rifle cracked open the morning air, before the instructors walked down with coffee in their hands and clipboards under their arms, Maya had already checked the target frames, patched the scoring boards, swept brass from the firing line, and marked wind direction flags along the outer lanes. Nobody had asked her to do it. That was how she preferred it. Her uniform carried no decorations visible from a distance. No combat patch that demanded questions. No polished confidence that begged to be noticed. Just faded camouflage, dusty boots, sleeves rolled with regulation precision, and a cap pulled low enough to shade her eyes. To most people on that range, she was support staff. The woman who changed targets. The one who walked downrange when the line went cold. The one who clipped paper, counted holes, and wrote numbers with a black marker on a clipboard that had seen too many rainy mornings. Maya had learned long ago that people revealed themselves fastest when they thought you were beneath them. So she let them. All morning, she had listened. She had listened as the SEAL candidates joked about who had the tightest groupings. She had listened as Ramsey bragged about his custom trigger and his glass. She had listened as 2 men argued over wind calls they had both read wrong. She had listened as one instructor quietly corrected them, only for Ramsey to roll his eyes when the man turned away. And each time Maya walked to the target line, she saw the truth printed in paper. Pull left under pressure. Rushed second shot. Breathing break inconsistent. Wind ignored after the first impact. The targets always told the story more honestly than the shooters did. Ramsey had been watching her watch them. That was what bothered him. Not that she was there. Not that she changed the targets. But that she looked at the bullet holes with the calm attention of someone who understood what they meant. Now he stood with his rifle extended toward her, his grin widening as the others waited. "Unless you're busy," he added, glancing at the paper in her hand. "Wouldn't want to interrupt official target-changing operations." Another laugh. Maya's eyes moved across the line. Some of the men looked amused. A few looked uncomfortable. One older chief standing near the ammunition table did not laugh at all. He studied Maya in silence, his arms folded across his chest, his expression unreadable. Ramsey stepped closer. The rifle was clean, expensive, well-maintained. A precision platform with a high-end optic, custom stock, and enough aftermarket confidence bolted onto it to make a young shooter feel invincible. Maya looked at the weapon, then at Ramsey's hands. "You offering," she asked quietly, "or performing?" The laughter thinned. Ramsey blinked once, then smiled harder. "I'm offering," he said. "Just thought maybe you'd like to see what a real rifle feels like." Maya let the word settle. The wind crossed the range from right to left, soft but steady. It tugged at the edge of the target paper near her hip. Somewhere beyond the berm, a metal chain clinked against a pole. The smell of dust, gun oil, and hot brass sat heavy in the air. She stepped toward him. Her movement was unhurried. No anger. No pride. Nothing theatrical. That bothered Ramsay more than a comeback would have. He held out the rifle with one hand, expecting hesitation. Maya took it with both. The moment her fingers closed around the stock, the range changed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough. The older chief near the ammunition table straightened. One of the instructors stopped writing. Ramsay's smile weakened before he understood why. Maya did not fumble with the weight. She did not search for the safety. She did not look down at the controls like a person handling unfamiliar equipment. Her right hand settled naturally behind the grip. Her left found balance under the forend. The muzzle stayed disciplined, angled safely downrange. Her trigger finger rested straight along the receiver, exactly where it belonged. It was a small thing, but small things were everything on a firing range. She checked the chamber without being told. Checked the magazine well. Checked the optic mount with a brief touch of her thumb. Then she lifted the rifle slightly and looked through the glass, not to aim, not yet, but to see how the scope had been set. "Your zero is high," she said. Ramsay laughed once. "No, it isn't." Maya lowered the rifle and looked at him. "Then your last three groups were." The line went quiet. Ramsay's jaw shifted. Across the range, the older chief's eyes narrowed, not in suspicion, but recognition. Maya turned toward the firing lanes. "Distance?" she asked. Ramsay hesitated. He had expected embarrassment. Maybe a nervous joke. Maybe a clumsy attempt that would prove his point in front of the others. He had not expected that question. 600, he said. Maya looked downrange at the steel plate beyond the paper frames, half-shadowed by the berm. Then she looked back at him. "Wind value." Ramsay opened his mouth. Nothing came out right away. One of the other SEALs glanced at the wind flags. Maya did not. She had already read them. The paper target in her hand fluttered once, then went still. Ramsay forced a smirk back onto his face. "Thought you were just trying the rifle." Maya nodded once. "I am." Then she stepped onto the mat. Maya Cross did not step onto the mat like someone accepting a dare. She stepped onto it like someone returning to a place she had once known too well. The gravel gave softly beneath her boots as she crossed from the target rack toward lane 7. Men shifted behind her. A bench creaked. Someone set down a magazine without finishing the load. The firing range, which had been full of jokes a moment earlier, settled into that strange quiet that comes when people realize the next few seconds might embarrass the wrong person. Lieutenant Cole Ramsay stood with his arms folded now. He was still smiling, but the smile had changed. It had become tighter at the corners, less certain. He watched Maya carry his rifle as if he were waiting for her to make one obvious mistake. She gave him none. Maya lowered herself to one knee beside the mat and placed the rifle down with careful control. Not precious. Not nervous. Just exact. The muzzle remained downrange. The bolt stayed open. Her hand moved once along the stock, feeling the length of pull, the cheek riser, the balance point. It was a good rifle. That was the problem. Good rifles made bad discipline easier to hide. Ramsay had spent money on everything a shooter could buy. Smooth trigger. Clear glass. Bipod with perfect tension. A sling that still looked almost new. But the target downrange had already told Maya what the rifle could not. The man behind it was rushing the shot the moment he thought someone was watching. She had seen it 1,000 times. Not always on ranges. Sometimes in rooms lit by red maps and low screens. Sometimes through dust on rooftops where a single wrong breath could change everything. Sometimes in students who arrived with decorated uniforms and loud confidence, then learned that long-range shooting had no interest in ego. The bullet only cared about truth. Maya adjusted the bipod legs by a fraction. Behind her, one of the younger SEALs muttered, "She's taking this pretty seriously." Ramsay answered without lowering his voice. "Let her. Makes it better." A few men chuckled. Maya did not look back. She settled behind the rifle, but did not yet put her eye to the optic. First, she watched the range itself. The flags near the 200 line leaned left. The grass near the 400 mark barely moved. Dust near the berm lifted and fell in uneven breaths. The wind was not strong, but it was inconsistent, lazy near the muzzle and cleaner near the target. That kind of wind punished impatient shooters. Maya had built her life around patience. At 32, she looked younger than the records attached to her name. Her face was narrow, sun-browned, and still in a way that made people mistake quiet for uncertainty. She was 5'4", lean rather than broad, with shoulders that never seemed to announce strength until she moved something heavy without effort. Her hands were the only part of her that told the truth openly. Calloused. Scarred in small places. A thin pale line across the knuckle of her right index finger. Another mark near her wrist, half hidden beneath her sleeve. Not the dramatic kind of scars people asked about, but the practical kind that came from work done in weather, under pressure, with tools that did not forgive carelessness. Earlier that morning, a new range assistant had asked her if she needed help carrying the target frames. Maya had said no. He had insisted. She had let him take one. By the time he reached lane 3, he was breathing hard. Maya had already carried 2 more to lane 6 without changing expression. Still, nobody looked twice. That was the strange thing about competence. When it came quietly, people often mistook it for background noise. To the SEAL team training that day, Maya had been part of the scenery. A woman in faded camo moving between targets. A clipboard under one arm. A roll of tape clipped to her belt. Someone useful, maybe. Someone official, probably. Someone important, no. Ramsey had decided that within the first hour. He was the kind of man who noticed rank tabs before posture, volume before discipline, size before control. Maya had met men like him in every branch, on every base, in every country where uniforms gathered and pride needed an audience. Most of them were not evil. That almost made them harder to deal with. They were careless. Careless with words. Careless with assumptions. Careless with the invisible weight their disrespect placed on the people around them. Ramsey had started small. "Ma'am, targets go that way," he had said when Maya corrected a frame angle. Then, when she marked his groupings without comment, he added, "Careful with those numbers. Don't want to confuse inches with centimeters." Later, after she asked the line to go cold so she could check a damaged bracket, he leaned toward another SEAL and said, "Range gets real professional when arts and crafts takes charge." Maya had heard every word. She had also heard the silence after each one. That silence mattered more. Men who laughed were easy to read. Men who disagreed, but said nothing were harder. They told themselves they were avoiding drama, preserving team unity, staying out of unnecessary conflict. Maya understood that instinct. She had lived under it. But silence had a shape. It made room for the next insult. And Ramsey had used that room. Now, as she lay behind his rifle, the same men watched her with the awkward curiosity of people who had helped build a moment they could no longer control. Maya placed her cheek against the stock. The world narrowed. Breath slowed. The noise behind her faded into layers, boots on gravel, nylon scraping against body armor, a magazine spring clicking under thumb pressure, someone swallowing too loudly. Beyond all of it, the steel plate waited at 600 yards, dull gray against the earth. She did not touch the trigger. Not yet. Her left hand made a small adjustment to the rear bag. Her shoulder settled. Her body aligned behind the rifle so the recoil would return straight instead of pushing the muzzle offline. She closed her eyes for one breath, opened them, and found the reticle exactly where she expected it to be. A faint shift passed through the older chief behind the line. Chief Warren Hale had been quiet all afternoon. He had seen too much in 20 years to be impressed by equipment, tattoos, loud voices, or the kind of swagger young operators mistook for combat readiness. He had watched Ramsey's jokes with the tired patience of a man deciding whether to correct a problem publicly or let it expose itself. Then Maya touched the rifle. And Hale stopped thinking of her as support staff. He did not know her yet. Not by name. Not by record. But he knew hands. Hands told the truth before mouths did. The way she cleared the chamber. The way she checked the optic without overhandling it. The way she read the lane before asking for distance. Those were not habits from a weekend course or a qualification range. Those were habits buried deeper than memory. Hale looked toward the range office. The door was closed. Inside that office, a sealed folder sat on the desk of the training commander. Hale had seen it delivered that morning by a courier who did not sign the normal log. He had noticed the red stripe on the folder. Evaluation Authority. Restricted distribution. At the time, he had assumed it had something to do with the new shooting standards. Now, watching Maya cross-breathe behind Ramsey's rifle, he was no longer sure. Ramsey shifted his weight. "You need help finding the target?" he asked. Maya kept her eye to the glass. No, her voice was flat. Not annoyed. Not proud. Just true. The answer bothered him more than anger would have. One of the SEALs beside him leaned closer and whispered, "Bro, she looks like she knows what she's doing." Ramsey shot him a look. "She changes paper for a living." Maya heard that too. For the first time, the corner of her mouth moved. Not quite a smile. More like the memory of one. Downrange, the wind settled. Only for a second. But a second was enough. Ramsey did not like the way the range had gone quiet. A firing line had its own kind of language. Boots scraping gravel. Bolts sliding forward. Magazines seating with hard clicks. Men joking too loudly because the sound of their own confidence kept doubt away. But this silence was different. It was not respect yet. It was attention. And attention, once turned in the wrong direction, could become dangerous. Maya Cross lay still behind his rifle, her body settled so cleanly into the mat that even the dust around her seemed undisturbed. Her cap brim shaded her eyes. Her cheek rested against the stock. Her breathing had slowed into something almost invisible. Ramsey watched her finger. Straight along the receiver. Still not on the trigger. That bothered him. A nervous person touched the trigger too soon. A show-off touched it for the audience. A beginner searched for the shot like the rifle might tell them when to fire. Maya waited. The steel plate sat 600 yards out, fixed against the berm in a washed-out square of sun. It was not an impossible shot. Not for trained men. Not for a SEAL team with expensive rifles and clean conditions. But after a full day of shooting, with fatigue in the shoulders and glare in the optic, it was enough to separate confidence from control. Ramsey told himself that was all this was. A simple shot. A lucky hit would mean nothing. "Whenever you're ready," he said. Maya did not answer. The wind touched the flags again. Right to left near the 200 line. Dead near 4. Shifting just before the target. Ramsey glanced at the others, trying to find his audience again. "I hope somebody's recording this." No one laughed right away. That made his voice sharper. "What?" he said, looking at the men beside him. "It's a fair test. She's been studying our targets all morning like a range oracle. Let's see the wisdom." One of the younger operators gave a weak grin. Another looked down at his boots. Chief Warren Hale remained silent near the ammunition table, arms folded, his gaze locked on Maya. Ramsey saw that, too. And for the first time that afternoon, irritation began to harden into something uglier. He stepped closer to the mat, just outside Maya's peripheral line. "Careful with the trigger," he said. "It breaks light. Wouldn't want you sending one into the dirt." Maya's right shoulder rose and fell once. A breath. Nothing more. Ramsey continued, "And don't worry if you miss. Happens to everyone their first time behind real glass." The line stayed quiet. Maya blinked behind the optic. Her world was no longer Ramsey's voice, or the men behind her, or the heat rising off the gravel. Her world was a reticle, a plate, a breath, and the moving air between them. She had learned to live inside that narrow world. Years earlier, before anyone on this range had ever heard her name, Maya had been taught that a rifle did not care what people called you. It did not care whether they admired you, doubted you, laughed at you, or prayed for you to fail. The rifle only answered one question. "Did you do your work?" The answer was never spoken. It arrived in steel, paper, dust, or silence. Her left hand compressed the rear bag by a hair. The reticle settled, drifted, settled again. She did not chase it. Chasing was panic. She let the movement show her the rhythm. Let the rifle breathe with her. Let the wind finish its small argument with the range. Then Ramsey spoke again. "Actually," he said, louder now, "maybe we should move it closer. 300? 200? I don't want to ruin anybody's afternoon." That got a laugh. Not from everyone, but enough. Maya lifted her head from the stock. Slowly. She looked back over her shoulder at Ramsay, and the movement alone drained the laughter from the line. Her expression had not changed much. That was what made it worse. There was no anger in her face. No embarrassment. No need to defend herself. Only calm. Are you done? She asked. Ramsay's smile vanished for half a second. Then he scoffed. Excuse me. Maya turned fully enough to meet his eyes. Talking, she said. Are you done talking? A few men shifted. Someone whispered, damn. Ramsay's neck flushed. He stepped closer, the toe of his boot almost touching the edge of the mat. You've got a lot of attitude for someone borrowing my rifle. Maya studied him for one quiet beat. Then she looked at the rifle. This rifle is fine, she said. Her eyes returned to him. That's not what I'm worried about. The words landed softly. That made them hit harder. Ramsay straightened. What's that supposed to mean? Maya did not answer. She turned back downrange and settled behind the stock again. The refusal cut deeper than an insult. Ramsay looked around at the others, expecting someone to step in, laugh, reset the room in his favor. No one did. The older chief still watched. The instructors watched. Even the men who had laughed earlier now seemed unsure where to place their eyes. So Ramsay did what careless men often did when silence started judging them. He escalated. Let's make it interesting, he said. Maya's cheek was already back on the stock. Define interesting. Ramsay pointed downrange. Not the 600 plate. Anybody can walk around onto steel if they get lucky. Chief Hale finally moved. Only a small shift, but everyone noticed. Ramsay ignored it. There's a cold bore marker at 800, he said. Half-size plate. Left side of the berm. We use it for advanced drills. Maya looked through the optic, then adjusted the magnification with 2 fingers. She found the plate. Small. Dark. Half hidden by uneven light. The wind would be less forgiving there. Mirage would blur the edge. A miss would be obvious. Perfect, Ramsay thought. He folded his arms again. Still want to play? Chief Hale's jaw tightened. Lieutenant, he said. The single word carried warning. Ramsay looked over. Chief. Hale held his gaze. You sure this is the lesson you want taught? Ramsay misunderstood the question completely. Yes, Chief, he said. I am. Maya's breathing remained even. The 800-yard plate hovered in the glass like a secret. Behind her, the range felt smaller now. The men closer. The air heavier. Some of them wanted her to hit it. Some wanted her to miss so the discomfort would end. Ramsay wanted proof that the world still worked the way he believed it did. Maya wanted none of those things. She only wanted the shot to be honest. A voice came from the far bench. Wind's picking up. Maya answered without lifting her head. No, it's switching. The man who had spoken looked toward the flags. 3 seconds later, the far left flag turned. Nobody said anything. Ramsay saw it. His mouth pressed into a line. Maya made one small correction. Not much. Just enough. The rifle settled again. Her finger finally moved from the receiver to the trigger. The entire firing line seemed to hold its breath with her. Ramsay watched, suddenly aware of his own heartbeat. For the first time since he had offered the rifle, he wondered whether he had made a mistake. Maya exhaled. Halfway. Stopped. And the range waited. The shot did not come when Ramsay expected it. That was the first thing he noticed. Most shooters, once they felt the whole line watching, rushed toward the trigger like the moment might run away from them. They saw the reticle cross steel and snatched at opportunity. They wanted the noise. The proof. The relief of doing something. Maya Cross did nothing. She held. The rifle rested against her shoulder as if it had always belonged there. Her body stayed aligned behind it, legs flat, elbows grounded, cheek welded to the stock with quiet certainty. The 800-yard plate waited in the glass, small enough that a careless breath could move the world off target. The wind moved again. A faint push from the right, then a softer return from the left. Ramsay saw one flag twitch and thought he understood it. Maya watched 3 things at once: the closest flag, the dust between the lanes, and the shimmer just above the berm. The air over the range was layered. Lazy near the firing line. Faster near the dip. Unsteady where heat rose off the earth. She let it speak. Behind her, Chief Warren Hale slowly unfolded his arms. He had stopped watching the rifle. Now he watched the shooter. There were men who could hit a plate at 800 yards. Plenty of them. Especially here. Especially with good equipment and a known distance. But very few could wait like that with people laughing behind them. Waiting was not emptiness. Waiting was work. It was math and instinct, patience and nerve, the discipline to do nothing until doing something mattered. Hale had seen that stillness before. Not on qualification days. In colder places. In darker ones. He glanced toward Lieutenant Ramsey and saw the young SEAL's confidence fraying at the edges. Ramsey's arms were still folded, but his fingers had tightened around his sleeves. His jaw worked once, then stopped. He wanted the shot over. He wanted the miss. He wanted the range to return to the shape he understood. Maya gave him neither. She took one more breath. Let half of it go. Her finger pressed. The rifle cracked. The sound hit the berm and rolled back across the range. A fraction of a second later, Steele answered. Clean. Sharp. Unmistakable. The plate swung once in the distance. No one spoke. Ramsey's eyes snapped downrange as if he could change what he had heard by staring hard enough. The spotter beside the bench lifted binoculars. Another operator leaned toward the scope, then went still. Impact, the spotter said. His voice was quieter than it needed to be. Maya did not move from the rifle. She kept her cheek on the stock and watched the plate settle. Ramsey forced a laugh that did not survive the air. Lucky, he said. Nobody joined him. Maya opened the bolt, caught the spent casing before it hit the mat, and set it beside her with the care of someone keeping a record. Then she looked back through the optic. Chief Hale's eyes narrowed slightly. He knew what that meant. She was not finished. Ramsey stepped forward. I said that was lucky. Maya's voice came from behind the stock. I heard you. The calm in it made his face tighten. Then do it again. One of the instructors finally spoke from the side. Lieutenant, that's enough. Ramsey did not look at him. His focus had narrowed to Maya now, to the woman he had turned into a challenge and could no longer turn back into support staff. No, he said. She wants to teach discipline. Let's see consistency. Maya lifted her head slightly and looked down the line. The older chief gave no order. No nod. No permission. But his silence was different from the others. It did not excuse Ramsey. It measured Maya. She understood. A single impact could be luck to men desperate enough to call it that. A second would become harder to explain. A third would become a mirror. She reached for another round. Ramsey watched her hand. It did not shake. Not even a little. That bothered him more than the hit. A person could get lucky under pressure. But calm after success was different. Calm meant the shot had not surprised her. Maya seated the round, closed the bolt, and returned to the optic. This time, the range silence deepened. The amusement was gone. So was the easy discomfort. What remained was a tension sharpened into respect that no one was ready to admit yet. Maya shifted the rifle a fraction left. Not much. Just enough to account for a wind change no one else had called. Ramsey caught the movement. You're overcorrecting, he said. Maya did not answer. The spotter near the bench glanced at the flags, then at the berm. His expression changed. He had seen it too late. Maya had not. She waited through the first push, ignored the false lull, and pressed just as the dust lifted behind the 400-yard marker. The rifle cracked again. Steel rang again. This time, the sound seemed louder. The plate rocked hard, flashing once in the sun. The spotter lowered the binoculars. Second impact. A breath moved through the firing line. Not a cheer. Not yet. Something heavier. Ramsey stared. His face had lost its color now. The smirk was gone completely, replaced by a blank, stubborn look Maya recognized well. It was the expression of a man standing in front of evidence, looking for a way to survive it without changing. She opened the bolt. Caught the casing. Set it beside the first. Two small brass witnesses in the dust. Chief Hale took one step closer. Maya, he said. The name moved through the line like a door opening. Ramsey turned toward the chief. You know her? Hale did not answer him. His eyes remained on Maya. Your call, he said. That changed the air again. Not because of the words themselves, but because of the way he said them. Not to a target assistant. Not to a civilian contractor. To a professional. Maya sat back from the rifle and looked at the 800-yard plate with no emotion in her face. Then she turned toward Ramsey. Do you want the lesson, she asked, or the show? Ramsey's mouth opened. No sound came. The men around him looked away, not to spare Maya, but to spare him. The question had exposed him more cleanly than the shots did. Because everyone knew the answer. He had never wanted a lesson. He had wanted a woman to fail in public. Maya waited for him to own that. He did not. Instead, he squared his shoulders and said, one more. Chief Hale's head turned slowly toward him. Lieutenant. This time, the warning was harder. But Ramsey's pride had already stepped past his judgment. One more, he repeated. Cold target. No spotter call. No adjustment from anyone. Maya looked at him for a long second. Then she nodded once. Fine. She reached into the ammunition tray. The range seemed to shrink around the movement. No jokes now. No shifting boots. No whispered comments. Only Maya loading the rifle for a third time while the man who had mocked her stood behind her, suddenly understanding that the rifle he had offered as a joke had become the instrument of his own correction. Maya closed the bolt. Settled in. And this time, she did something none of them expected. She moved off the 800-yard plate. Her reticle drifted past it, farther left, toward a smaller piece of steel half hidden near the berm support post. Ramsey frowned. What are you aiming at? Maya's answer was almost too quiet to hear. The mistake. The spotter leaned into his glass and froze. Chief Hale's expression changed for the first time. Not surprise. Confirmation. At the far end of the range, beside the half-size plate Ramsey had chosen, a narrow bolt head on the target bracket had been catching sunlight all afternoon. It was not a target. It was not painted. It was smaller than a man's thumb from where they stood. Maya had noticed it every time she changed paper. She breathed in. Let half out. The rifle fired. A bright spark jumped at the berm. The steel plate did not ring. Instead, the target bracket snapped loose and dropped sideways, the half-size plate swinging down at an awkward angle, dead and useless on its chain. For one full second, nobody understood what had happened. Then the spotter whispered, she hit the bracket bolt. The words traveled down the line like thunder arriving late. Ramsey stepped back. Not far. Just enough. His own rifle suddenly looked different in Maya's hands. So did she. The broken bracket hung at the far end of the range like a question no one wanted to answer. For several seconds, all anyone could hear was the soft ticking of cooling barrels, the distant clink of loose steel, and the wind moving over the berm. Maya opened the bolt. The spent casing rose, turned in the air, and landed in her palm. She set it beside the other two. 3 pieces of brass in a straight line. 3 corrections. Not one of them loud. Lieutenant Cole Ramsey stared through the spotting scope as if distance might rescue him from what had just happened. The half-size plate he had chosen now dangled uselessly from one side, its bracket bolt sheared clean by a shot no one had asked for, because no one else had seen the flaw. Maya had. That was the part that unsettled them most. It was not only that she could shoot. Good shooters existed. Great shooters existed. Every man on that range had trained with someone who could make steel ring from impossible distances on the right day, with the right wind, under the right conditions. But Maya had done something different. She had read the range like a living thing. She had seen the weakness in the target system before anyone challenged her. She had waited while Ramsey talked. She had accepted his rifle, his distance, his pressure, and his disrespect. Then she had used all of it to show the difference between hitting what was obvious and understanding what mattered. Chief Warren Hale stepped forward first. His boots crunched once against the gravel. No one else moved. Maya, he said, his voice low. She sat back from the rifle, keeping the muzzle down range and the bolt open. Chief. That single word confirmed what the others were beginning to fear. They knew each other. Or at least, he knew enough to use her first name on a range full of operators who had spent the morning treating her like hired help. Ramsey looked from Hale to Maya. His expression had gone stiff, caught somewhere between anger and disbelief. "You knew she could shoot," he said. Hale turned his head slowly. "I knew you couldn't listen." The sentence landed harder than any shout could have. A few of the men looked away. Ramsey's jaw tightened. "Chief, with respect, I offered her the rifle. She accepted." "No," Hale said. "You offered her humiliation. The rifle was just the tool." The range stayed silent. Maya stood. She did it without hurry, brushing dust from one sleeve before lifting Ramsey's rifle from the mat. The weapon looked almost too large against her frame, but no one on the line thought that anymore. Size had become irrelevant. So had assumption. She carried the rifle back to Ramsey. For a moment, he did not take it. His eyes were fixed on hers, searching for victory there, for arrogance, for anything he could resent openly. He found none. That was worse. Maya simply held out the rifle, chamber open, magazine removed, optic facing away from the dust. "Safe. Clean. Professional. Your rifle tracks well," she said. Ramsey took it slowly. His fingers closed around the stock. "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" No, her answer was immediate. A few men shifted. Maya continued, "It's supposed to tell you the equipment wasn't your problem." Ramsey's face flushed. Behind him, one of the younger SEALs lowered his eyes. Another swallowed and looked toward the broken plate downrange. The lesson had spread past the man who needed it most. Maya turned as if to return to the target rack. But Hale stopped her. "Stay." She paused. It was not an order exactly. Not the kind barked across a range. It was a request shaped by authority and old respect. The training commander had stepped out of the range office now. Commander Elias Voss was a broad-shouldered man in his late 40s, with close-cropped gray hair and the patient, severe face of someone who had spent more of his life evaluating men than comforting them. He had been inside the office during the shooting. The window blinds were half open. He had seen everything. In his left hand, he carried a folder. Red stripe. Restricted. Ramsey saw the folder and straightened instinctively. So did the others. Maya did not. She only watched Voss approach, her expression unchanged. The commander stopped beside Hale, then looked downrange at the damaged bracket. "Range maintenance is going to hate that," Voss said. Maya's eyes stayed forward. It was already loose. "I noticed." "No, sir," she said quietly. "You noticed after." For one dangerous second, no one breathed. Then Voss smiled. "Not much. Just enough." "That I did." Ramsey's confusion deepened. The commander turned toward the line. "Weapons. Down. Eyes here." The command snapped through the range. Every operator obeyed at once. Rifles were cleared. Bolts locked back. Hands came off triggers and settled where they belonged. The men who had been laughing 20 minutes earlier now stood like students waiting for a grade they no longer wanted. Voss opened the folder. Maya glanced at it once. A flicker crossed her face. Not fear. Dislike. She had never enjoyed records. Records flattened people. They turned nights into bullet points, decisions into summaries, scars into dates. They gave strangers permission to think they understood what something had cost. Voss seemed to know that. He did not read from the file yet. Instead, he looked at Ramsey. "Lieutenant, tell me what you saw." Ramsey hesitated. He had been trained to report clearly, objectively, without emotion. But objectivity was difficult when the report was about your own mistake. He looked at Maya, then at the commander. "She hit the 800-yard plate twice," he said. "And?" Ramsey swallowed. "Then she disabled the target bracket." "Did she ask for your rifle?" "No, sir." "Did she ask to be tested?" "No, sir." "Did she disrespect your team before you handed her that weapon?" Ramsey's eyes dropped for half a second. "No, sir." Voss closed the folder slightly. "Then why did the test happen?" The question did not need volume. Everyone knew the answer. The whole range had heard it form in jokes, comments, smirks, and the kind of laughter men pretend is harmless until it forces someone else to carry the weight. Ramsey said nothing. Voss waited. Hale watched him with no sympathy. Finally, Ramsay answered. Because I underestimated her. Voss nodded once. That is the clean version. Ramsay flinched. Maya looked away toward the flags. The wind had gone soft again. The commander turned to the rest of the team. You all did. No one argued. You saw a woman changing targets and decided that was the whole story. You saw quiet and called it weakness. You saw no visible rank, no loud introduction, no need to impress you, and you filled the silence with whatever made you feel taller. The words did not come fast. That made them worse. Each sentence had room to sink in. Maya stood still beside the target rack, her face unreadable. Part of her wanted to leave. Let the commander finish the lecture. Let the men feel embarrassed for an hour, maybe a day, then return to whatever version of themselves they were willing to become. But another part of her knew why she had been sent here. Not to win a bet. Not to shame one lieutenant. To find the cracks before those cracks became casualties. Voss opened the folder again. Maya Cross is not range support. Ramsay's head lifted. The younger operators froze. Hale's gaze stayed on the line, watching the moment move through them. She was placed here under evaluation authority for a reason, Voss continued. Not to test how well you shoot when instructors are watching. To test how you behave when you think no one important is. The silence became heavier. Maya's jaw tightened slightly. There it was. The real target. Not the steel plate. Them. Ramsay looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in his face changed. The anger had nowhere to stand now. The disbelief was losing ground. What remained was the first uncomfortable edge of recognition. Maya had not wandered into his lesson. He had walked into hers. Voss turned one page in the folder. Some of you know her work, even if you don't know her name. Maya's eyes moved to him. Commander. A warning. Soft. Voss paused. He understood. There were things in that folder that did not belong to a firing line. Places that still had no names in official briefings. Men who came home because someone unseen had made impossible calculations under impossible pressure. Missions reduced to ink because the truth was too heavy to hand out casually. He closed the folder halfway. All they need today, Voss said, is enough. Maya said nothing. Voss faced the team again. Chief Cross has trained snipers from 3 branches, corrected 2 allied precision programs, and rewritten wind-reading procedures some of you are still being taught from. The men stared. Ramsay's mouth parted slightly. Chief. The word moved through the line faster than the gunshot had. Not support staff. Not target girl. Chief Cross. Maya did not straighten. With pride. She did not look satisfied. She looked almost tired, as if the title were not a crown but weight she had learned to carry without letting it show. Voss looked at Ramsay. And you handed her your rifle like a joke. Ramsay's throat worked. Yes, sir. Maya stepped forward then. Not to rescue him. Not exactly. To end the bleeding before it became performance. Lieutenant Ramsay, she said. He turned to her immediately. Chief. The correction came fast. Maybe too fast. But it came. Maya held his gaze. You wanted to know what your rifle felt like in the hands of someone who could read your target. Ramsay stood rigid. Yes, Chief. Now you know. The words were not cruel. That made them impossible to defend against. Maya walked past him toward the damaged lane, carrying the roll of tape from her belt and a small wrench from the target rack. For a moment, no one understood what she was doing. Then Hale exhaled through his nose, almost a laugh. She was going to fix the bracket. After all of it, the shots, the reveal, the commander's correction, Maya Cross walked down range to repair the target herself. Ramsay watched her go. The distance between them seemed longer than 800 yards. Maya Cross walked down range alone. No one spoke behind her. The gravel path between the firing line and the berm stretched long under the late afternoon sun, broken by tire marks, spent patches of grass, and the faint scars of years of training. The range flags shifted lazily above her, red fabric snapping once, then falling still. She carried no rifle now. Only a roll of tape, a small wrench, and the same calm that had bothered Ramsay from the beginning. From the firing line, the men watched her move toward the damaged plate. 800 yards made a person look small. It turned faces into shapes and bodies into silhouettes. But even at that distance, Maya did not look diminished. She looked like she belonged to the range more than any of them did. Lieutenant Cole Ramsey stood with his rifle held across his chest. He had not moved since she passed him. His weapon felt heavier now. Not because its weight had changed, but because everything attached to it had. His pride. His assumptions. The sound of 2 impacts. The spark from the bracket bolt. The commander's voice saying Chief Cross. Chief. He replayed the word in his head like a mistake in a report. Chief Cross had been beside them all morning. Carrying paper. Marking targets. Calling the line cold. Listening to their jokes. Hearing his jokes. And she had never once corrected him with her rank. That made it worse. If she had walked in with authority visible on her collar, Ramsey would have known how to behave. He could have saluted, adjusted his tone, performed the discipline expected of him. But she had arrived without giving him a uniformed warning that respect was required. So he had shown her who he was when he thought it was optional. That realization sat colder than embarrassment. Commander Elias Voss watched Maya through the range glass for a moment, then lowered the binoculars. Chief Hale, he said. Sir. Reset lane 7 after she clears the bracket. Then move the team to observation. Hale nodded. Yes, sir. Ramsey looked over. Observation, sir? Voss turned to him. The commander's face held no anger. That was almost worse. Anger would have given Ramsey something to push against. Voss only looked tired in the way senior men looked when younger men disappointed them in predictable ways. You are going to watch her teach, Voss said. Ramsey's mouth tightened. Understood, sir. No, Voss said. I don't think you do. The line went still again. Voss stepped closer, lowering his voice enough that only Ramsey and the men nearest him could hear, but not enough to make it private. You treated this range like a stage. You treated your rifle like a prop. And you treated a professional like a punchline because you couldn't imagine expertise arriving in a form you didn't recognize. Ramsey kept his eyes forward. Yes, sir. Voss held him there. Do not hide behind yes, sir. Learn. The words struck clean. Ramsey swallowed. Yes, sir. This time, it sounded different. Downrange, Maya reached the damaged plate. She knelt beside the bracket and examined the bolt housing. The shot had not destroyed the target assembly. It had knocked the weak point loose exactly where she intended. A clean demonstration. Surgical, almost. She touched the bracket, tested the chain, then looked back toward the firing line. Even from that distance, Hale knew what she wanted. Line is cold, he called. All weapons clear. Nobody moves forward. Maya raised one hand in acknowledgement and began working. The team watched her fix what she had broken. That, more than the shots, unsettled some of them. They had expected the moment to end with applause, a lecture, maybe a punishment. They had expected hierarchy to reassert itself. The commander reveals the truth, the lieutenant gets humbled, the team absorbs the lesson, and the mysterious expert walks away. But Maya did not walk away. She tightened the bracket. She replaced the bolt. She checked the swing of the plate with one hand. Then she retaped the nearby paper target that had torn loose in the wind. It was ordinary work. Necessary work. The kind of work nobody noticed unless it was not done. Hale glanced at Ramsey. You see that? Ramsey did not answer at first. Yes, Chief. What do you see? Ramsey watched Maya press the tape flat with her thumb. She's fixing the target. Hale's eyes remained downrange. No. She's protecting the next shooter from your lesson becoming their problem. Ramsey looked at him. Hale's voice stayed low. That's the difference between pride and standards. Pride wants witnesses. Standards do the work after everyone stops clapping. The words stayed with him. Maya finished at the bracket, stood, and stepped aside. She looked at the plate one more time, then began the long walk back. No one joked now. No one whispered. By the time she reached the 600-yard line, the first young operator removed his sunglasses. It was not required. No one ordered it. But he did it anyway, as if looking at her through tinted glass suddenly felt disrespectful. Another straightened his posture. A third quietly cleared space on the bench she had used. Small things. But small things were everything. Maya returned to the firing line and set the wrench back on the target rack. She did not look at Ramsey. She did not need to. The lesson was not finished, and everyone on the line felt it. Commander Voss stepped beside her. "Chief Cross," he said, loud enough for the team to hear. "The range is yours." Maya looked at him. For the first time that afternoon, something like reluctance crossed her face. Then it disappeared. She turned toward the team. "Gather around lane 7. The men moved immediately. Not perfectly. Not yet. There was still uncertainty in them, the awkward stiffness of people who had realized too late that the room had changed. But they moved without complaint. Ramsey stayed half a step behind. Hale noticed. So did Maya. She said nothing about it. When the team formed around the bench, Maya picked up Ramsey's earlier target sheet. The one from before the challenge. The one marked with his groupings from the morning. She clipped it to the board facing the men. Ramsey's face tightened. There it was. Not his failure at 800. His habits at 6. His real problem had been visible long before he spoke. Maya tapped the paper with one finger. "This is not bad shooting," she said. Ramsey blinked. He had expected criticism first. Maya looked at the group. "Bad shooting is random. This is not random. This is repeatable error. That means it can be fixed." The younger operators leaned in to spite themselves. She pointed to the first cluster. "First shot clean. Second shot left. Third low left." Then he corrects too aggressively and pulls high right. Ramsey stared at the paper. He had seen the holes all morning. He had not seen the pattern. Maya continued, "That tells me 3 things. He breaks position after impact. He wants confirmation before the rifle finishes recoiling. And when he feels watched, he drives the shot instead of releasing it." The silence changed. It was no longer shame. It was learning. One of the SEALs beside Ramsey looked from the target to his own paper. Another quietly reached for a notebook. Hale saw it and almost smiled. Maya turned to Ramsey. "What did you feel on your second shot?" He hesitated. The old reflex rose in him. Defend, explain, protect the image. But every man on the range was watching. This time, not for entertainment. For honesty. Ramsey looked at the target. "I rushed the confirmation," he said. Maya waited. He exhaled. "I wanted to see the hit." "And?" His jaw moved. "I came off the rifle." Maya nodded. "There it is. Not praise. Not softness. But recognition." It felt heavier than both. She picked up another target, this one from a quieter shooter named Petty Officer Daniel Price. His groups had been tighter but inconsistent at distance. Maya placed it beside Ramsey's. "Different mistake," she said. "Same route." Price frowned. "Breathing?" "Trust," Maya said. The answer caught him off guard. Maya pointed to his vertical spread. "You are waiting too long for perfect. Perfect never comes. By the time you decide to fire, your body is already fighting the position. You don't need a better hold. You need to accept a good one before it decays." Price stared at the paper like it had become personal. It had. That was Maya's gift. She could look at bullet holes and tell a man what he was afraid of. Voss stood off to the side, silent now. Hale stood beside him. Neither interrupted. Maya moved down the line of targets. One by one, she read them. Not with cruelty. Not with showmanship. With precision. "You're muscling the stock. You're changing cheek pressure after breathing. You don't trust your wind call. You're anticipating recoil. You're trying to prove you belong every time you touch the trigger." The last one landed on a young operator near the back. His face went still. Maya did not soften the truth, but she did not leave him exposed either. She added, "Stop auditioning. Start working." The young man nodded once. "Yes, Chief." The title sounded different now. Not forced. Earned. Ramsey listened to all of it, each correction sharpening the shape of his own humiliation into something more useful. He had thought Maya's skill was the threat. It was not. Her clarity was. She saw too much. Not only through the scope. Through people. At last, Maya returned to lane 7. She placed Ramsey's rifle back on the mat. Then she looked at him. "Lieutenant." He stepped forward. "Chief." Prone. The word struck him like an order and an invitation. Ramsey looked at the mat. A few minutes earlier, Maya had occupied that place while he stood over her making jokes. Now the mat waited for him under the eyes of the team he had tried to entertain. He lowered himself behind the rifle. Maya crouched beside him, far enough not to crowd, close enough to correct. Build your position. Ramsey settled in. Too fast. Maya touched the back of his boot with 2 fingers. Again. He reset. Slow is smooth when smooth has a purpose, she said. Don't perform slow. Use it. He adjusted. She watched his shoulder. Stop fighting the rifle. It is not impressed by you. A few men almost laughed. Not at Ramsey. At the truth of it. He breathed, settled, and looked through the optic. The 800-yard plate was upright again now, repaired and waiting. Maya spoke quietly beside him. Do not shoot to be forgiven. Do not shoot to get even. Do not shoot to win back the room. Ramsey's finger stayed straight along the receiver. What am I shooting for? Maya looked downrange. The truth. The range fell silent around them. Ramsey breathed in. Let half out. For once, he did not rush toward the trigger. He waited. Maya watched the wind. Then she said one word. Now. Now. Maya said it softly. No one else on the range moved. Lieutenant Cole Ramsey held his breath halfway out, cheek pressed to the stock, right eye locked behind the optic. The repaired 800-yard plate waited at the far berm, smaller now than it had seemed when he chose it for her. Before, it had been a weapon. A way to embarrass someone. Now it looked like judgment. Ramsey's finger touched the trigger. He felt every mistake trying to return. The urge to rush. The need to prove he had recovered. The heat in his face from being corrected in front of his team. The pressure of knowing every man behind him was watching the same shoulders that had stood over Maya minutes earlier. His reticle drifted across the plate. Not steady. Not perfect. But honest. Maya crouched beside him, eyes not on the target, but on him. His breathing. His shoulder. His jaw. The small tightening in his hand right before Pride tried to take control of the shot. Don't grab it, she said. Ramsey eased off. Let the rifle finish the sentence. He inhaled again, slower this time. Let the air leave. Let the reticle move without chasing it. The wind crossed soft from right to left, then settled into a narrow pause. His finger pressed. The rifle cracked. The sound moved across the range, struck the berm, and rolled back thinner than before. A heartbeat later, steel rang. Not perfect. Not dead center. But clean. Impact. Ramsey stayed behind the scope, frozen. For the first time that afternoon, he did not lift his head to check who had seen. He did not turn for approval. He did not smile. He watched the plate swing, watched the movement fade, and kept his body behind the rifle until the recoil finished and the sight picture returned. Maya saw it. That mattered more than the hit. Better, she said. One word. Ramsey closed his eyes for half a second. It felt less like praise than permission to stop pretending. Behind them, the team remained quiet. Not because they were afraid to speak, but because they understood that something important had shifted. The lesson had moved past humiliation. It had become work. Chief Hale stood beside Commander Voss with his arms folded again, but the tension had left his shoulders. He listened, Hale said. Voss watched Ramsey open the bolt and clear the rifle properly. After he ran out of easier options. Hale almost smiled. That's how some men learn. Only the ones worth keeping. The words were low, meant for Hale alone. But Maya heard them. She always heard more than people expected. Ramsey sat back from the rifle and looked up at her. For a moment, he seemed younger. Not weak. Not broken. Just stripped of the extra armor that arrogance had placed over uncertainty. Chief, he said. Maya waited. He looked toward the target board where his earlier groupings still hung. Then back to her. I was out of line. No one moved. The apology stood there in the open, plain and unfinished. Maya did not rescue him from it. Ramsey swallowed. I made you the joke because I didn't like that you saw what I was doing wrong. His eyes dropped for a second, then returned to hers. And because I thought someone changing targets couldn't know more than me. Maya's face remained still, but the silence around them sharpened. Ramsey took a breath. That was disrespectful. And stupid. A faint breeze moved across the lane. Maya studied him long enough that Ramsey almost looked away. He didn't. That was the second thing she noticed. The first had been that he stayed behind the rifle after impact. The second was that he stayed inside the apology after shame arrived. Maya nodded once. Good. Ramsey blinked. He had expected more. A lecture. A punishment. Maybe the cold satisfaction of someone finally taking the high ground he had handed her. Maya gave him none of it. Now remember how bad this feels, she said. Not so you can punish yourself. So you don't make someone else carry it. Ramsey's throat moved. Yes, Chief. Maya turned to the rest of the line. What happened here is not rare. No one argued. She walked to the target board and took Ramsey's sheet down. Then she lifted the next one. You will meet people in uniform who do not look like your idea of dangerous. Some will be smaller than you, quieter than you, younger, older, from places you do not respect because you have never had to. Some will carry tools instead of rifles. Some will stand behind radios. Some will patch wounds, repair engines, move supplies, change targets. Her eyes moved across the men. And one day, your life may depend on the person you overlooked. The words did not sound dramatic. That made them feel truer. Commander Voss lowered his chin slightly, approving but silent. Maya continued, skill does not always announce itself. Authority does not always wear a sign. And discipline is not how you behave when a commander is standing in front of you. She looked at Ramsey. It is how you behave when you think no one important is watching. Ramsey accepted it without flinching. The younger operators behind him did too. Maya clipped the target sheet back to the board. Now we train. The change was immediate. Not loud. Not theatrical. But real. The firing line reorganized around her voice. Men who had been joking earlier now listened for each word. Rifles were reset. Data books opened. Spotting scopes adjusted. The same range, the same wind, the same steel plates, but the atmosphere had become different. Sharper. Cleaner. Earned. Maya paired the operators off and made them switch roles. Shooters became spotters. Spotters became wind callers. The men with the best scores had to explain their process before firing. The men with the worst habits had to call their mistakes out loud before correcting them. No one liked that part. That was why it worked. Ramsey was assigned to spot for Petty Officer Daniel Price. At first, his voice was stiff. Hold left edge, he said. Maya walked behind him. Why? Ramsey paused. The old answer would have been because I said so. He looked downrange, then at the flags, then at the shimmer near the berm. Wind is switching at the 400 line, he said. Right to left near the target. Not much. Half value. Maya waited. Ramsey added, if he holds center, it'll push him off the plate. Maya nodded. Then say that. Ramsey leaned closer to the scope. Price, hold left edge. Wind is switching near the target. Half value. Don't chase the first lull. Price settled behind the rifle. Copy. The shot cracked. Steel rang. Price looked back with a surprised grin. Ramsey did not grin back right away. He looked at the plate, then at Maya, then down at the scope again. For the first time that day, he seemed to understand that helping another shooter hit felt different from making himself look good. Maya moved on. At lane 5, a younger SEAL named Harris kept breaking cheek weld after every shot. Maya made him fire 3 dry presses with his eyes closed. At lane 3, another operator muscled the stock so aggressively that his pulse showed in the reticle. Maya had him loosen his grip until he looked uncomfortable, then showed him how the rifle settled when he stopped trying to dominate it. Control is not force, she told him. It is agreement. The man nodded slowly, like the sentence reached somewhere beyond marksmanship. Hour by hour, the range changed. Groupings tightened. Voices lowered. Wind calls became more precise. Men stopped blaming mirage, glass, ammo, heat, bad rests, strange light, and everything else that sounded better than admitting they had work to do. Maya did not praise easily. But when she did, it was specific. Good correction. Better follow through. That was patience. Now you're reading instead of guessing. Each phrase landed like a coin earned honestly. Ramsey worked harder than anyone. Not because Maya demanded it. Because no one did. That was the strange mercy of the lesson. He had not been destroyed. He had been exposed, corrected, and handed a way forward. What he did with it was now his responsibility. Near sunset, Commander Voss called the team in. The men gathered around the center bench, tired and dusty, with brass at their boots and sweat darkening their collars. The earlier arrogance had drained out of them. What remained was not softness. It was focus. Voss stood beside Maya. Today was supposed to be an evaluation, he said. It became one sooner than planned. A few eyes flicked toward Ramsey. Ramsey did not look away. Voss continued, marksmanship is not just shooting. It is judgment under pressure. It is humility before variables you cannot bully. It is respect for the person beside you, because arrogance makes bad data, and bad data gets people hurt. No one spoke. Then Voss turned toward Maya. Chief Cross will continue with this unit for the next phase. The men absorbed that in silence. This time, not shocked. Ready. Ramsey stepped forward. The movement drew every eye. He stopped in front of Maya and stood at attention. Chief Cross, he said, voice steady. Permission to remain in the course. The request hit the range differently than his apology. Maya understood what it cost him to say it in front of the team. Not because she wanted him humiliated, but because he had finally placed the mission above his image. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, permission depends on tomorrow. Ramsey nodded. Yes, Chief. Show up early. How early? Maya picked up the roll of tape from the bench and handed it to him. Before the targets are up. For a second, Ramsey stared at it. Then he took the tape. The lesson was clear. Tomorrow, he would help prepare the range. Not as punishment. As correction. As service. As a reminder that no work tied to the mission was beneath him. Maya turned away as the sun slipped lower behind the berm, painting the steel. Plates in dull orange light. Behind her, Ramsey looked at the roll of tape in his hand. For the first time all day, he understood the weight of something small. The next morning, Lieutenant Cole Ramsey arrived before the sun touched the berm. For the first time since joining the Advanced Precision course, he was not the first shooter on the range because he wanted people to notice his discipline. He was early because Maya Cross had handed him a roll of tape and told him where the lesson began. Before the targets were up. The compound was still blue with dawn. Floodlights hummed over the gravel lanes. The steel plates out past 600 yards sat in shadow, dull and quiet, waiting for the day to give them shape. Somewhere near the armory, a generator coughed awake. The smell of wet dust and cold metal hung in the air. Ramsey stood at the target rack with sleeves rolled and no audience. That part mattered. He carried frames downrange. He checked bolts. He replaced torn backing boards. He tightened chains that had loosened in the wind overnight. When he reached Lane 7, he stopped for a moment beside the bracket Maya had repaired the day before. The new bolt held firm. He touched it once with his thumb. Not as superstition. As memory. Then he taped the first paper target into place. He was pressing the bottom corner flat when a voice came from behind him. You're pulling the tape too tight. Ramsey turned. Maya stood 10 yards away with a clipboard under one arm and a coffee cup in her other hand. She wore the same faded camouflage as yesterday. Same plain cap. Same quiet expression. In the dim light, she could have passed again for range support to anyone determined not to see. But Ramsey saw her now. Chief, he said, straightening. Maya walked closer and looked at the target. Tape too tight tears when the wind hits it, she said. Loose enough to move. Firm enough to hold. Ramsey looked at the corner he had just placed. Then he redid it. Yes, Chief. Maya watched without comment. That was how the morning started. No speech. No ceremony. No mention of yesterday's embarrassment. Just a target, a mistake, and a correction. By 0600, the rest of the team began arriving. One by one, they slowed when they saw Ramsey already downrange with the frames. Some looked surprised. A few looked uncomfortable, as if his humility demanded something from them too. Petty Officer Daniel Price was the first to move. He walked to the rack, picked up 2 backing boards, and headed down range without saying a word. Then Harris followed. Then Kim. Then the others. Soon the range was full of men doing work most of them had once ignored unless ordered. Maya stood near lane 1 and watched. Chief Hale came up beside her with 2 cups of coffee. He handed her one. "You planned that?" he asked. Maya took the cup. "Planned what?" Hale looked downrange at Ramsey helping Price align a frame. "That?" "No," Hale gave her a sideways look. Maya sipped the coffee. "I gave him tape. He chose what to do with it." Hale nodded slowly. "That's colder than punishment. It lasts longer." The chief smiled faintly. By 06:30, Commander Voss arrived with the red-striped folder tucked under his arm. He did not open it. He did not need to. The first part of the evaluation was already standing in front of him, written in body language and quiet labor. He watched the men finish setting the range. Then he looked at Maya. "Ready?" Maya's eyes moved across the lanes. "Almost." Voss followed her gaze. Ramsey was still at lane 7, checking the target from the side, making sure it was square. Price said something to him. Ramsey listened, then adjusted the frame instead of arguing. Voss noticed. So did Hale. So did Maya. A small correction. A real one. When the team returned to the firing line, Maya gathered them around the center bench. The sun was just lifting over the far berm now, turning the tops of the target frames gold while the lanes remained cool and shadowed. "Yesterday," Maya said, "you learned what happens when pride touches a rifle before discipline does." No one looked away. "Today, we find out what happens after." She set the clipboard down. "This phase is not about perfect shots. Perfect shots are easy to respect. I want to see what you do with bad data, shifting wind, missed calls, and someone else depending on your correction." She looked at Ramsey. "Shooter and spotter pairs. Rotate every 3 rounds. If your partner misses and you blame him before checking your call, you fail the drill." The men began pairing off. Ramsey moved toward Price without hesitation. Maya stopped him. "Not Price." Ramsey paused. Maya looked toward the back of the line, where a younger operator named Ellis stood alone, trying not to look like he was waiting to be chosen. Ellis had struggled the day before. Not terribly. Just enough to be dismissed by stronger shooters. He was quiet, long-limbed, and uncertain behind glass. Men like Ramsey used to overlook men like Ellis because helping them did not raise anyone's status. Maya pointed. "Him." Ramsey understood immediately. "Yes, Chief." He walked to Ellis. The younger man looked surprised. "You sure?" Ramsey picked up the spotting scope. "No," Ellis blinked. Ramsey set the scope on the tripod. "But I'm learning." Across the line, Maya heard it. She gave no sign. The drill began. The first hour was ugly. Wind moved in broken layers across the range. Shooters misread it. Spotters overcorrected. Men who had looked solid at 600 fell apart at 8. Mirage lifted off the berm and blurred the target edges. A cloud covered the sun, changed the light, then moved away again, leaving half the line chasing shadows. Maya let them struggle. That was hard for some instructors. Not for her. Struggle revealed structure. At lane 7, Ellis missed his first shot low right. Ramsey leaned into the spotting scope. "Impact low right," he said, then stopped himself. His first instinct was to tell Ellis what he had done wrong. Instead, he looked at the flags. Then at the dust. Then through the scope again. "My wind call was late," he said. "Hold center left. Same elevation. Don't change your body." Ellis stayed behind the rifle. "Copy." Second shot. Steel rang. Ellis exhaled a laugh into the stock. "Hit." Ramsey did not celebrate. He stayed in the scope. "Good. Don't chase it. Same hold unless the wind switches." Maya walked past them. "Better," she said. One word. Ramsey heard it. So did Ellis. Both men worked harder after that. By mid-morning, the range had changed completely. The jokes did not disappear, but they changed shape. Less cutting. More useful. Men called out wind shifts for each other. They corrected without humiliating. They admitted misses faster. They stopped treating every error like a threat to identity. That was when Commander Voss opened the folder. He stood beside Hale near the back bench while Maya moved between lanes. Do they know the rest? Hale asked quietly. Voss looked at the file. Enough for training. That wasn't my question. Voss did not answer right away. A shot cracked. Steel rang at 700. Maya corrected Harris's shoulder position with 2 fingers, then moved on. Voss watched her. Most of her record stays sealed. Hale's expression hardened slightly. They should know who's teaching them. They do. No, Hale said. They know she has credentials. They don't know why men who outrank everyone on this range read her evaluations twice. Voss closed the folder. That knowledge has weight. Hale looked at Maya again. She carries it anyway. The commander was quiet. Then he called the line cold. The command moved down the range. Rifles cleared. Bolts locked back. Shooters sat up from their mats, blinking in the sudden pause. Voss stepped forward. Gather in. The team formed around him, dusty and focused now, not the same men who had stood laughing the day before. Maya stopped near the edge of the group. She knew that look in Voss's face. Commander, she said softly. He turned to her. There was warning in her voice, but not fear. She did not want ghosts turned into stories for men who had not earned the full truth. She did not want pain converted into inspiration. She did not want the dead used as teaching aids. Voss understood. So he chose carefully. You don't need the classified parts, he told the team. You don't need locations, names, or mission details. What you need is the standard standing in front of you. The men looked at Maya. She looked away toward the berm. Voss continued. Chief Cross spent years in places where one shot did not mean a score. It meant a door opened, a convoy moved, a wounded man came home, or a team got one more minute to survive. The range was utterly still. She has taught operators who entered this course thinking skill was something they already owned. She has corrected men with more medals than manners. She has watched arrogance fail faster than equipment ever does. Ramsey lowered his eyes. Not from shame this time. From understanding. Voss's voice stayed even. And she has never once needed to make herself large so smaller people could recognize her. That line landed across the team like a slow bell. Maya's joy tightened. Hale noticed. Voss did too, so he stopped there. No numbers. No legends. No impossible distances. No stories that belonged to sealed rooms and folded flags. Just enough. Maya stepped forward before the silence could turn her into a monument. Back to work, she said. The men almost smiled. Not because it was funny. Because it was her. No performance. No speech after the speech. No letting them stare too long at a version of her they could admire from a safe distance. She brought them back to the rifle, the wind, the work. By noon, Ramsey and Ellis had become the most improved pair on the line. Not the best. Improved. That mattered more to Maya. On their final rotation, Ellis settled behind the rifle at 900 yards. The plate was small, the wind inconsistent, the light harsh. He had missed twice earlier at that distance and wanted this one badly enough that his breathing started to tighten. Ramsey saw it. Stop, he said. Ellis lifted his finger off the receiver. What? Ramsey crouched beside him. You're trying to win the shot before you take it. Ellis frowned. I need the hit. No, Ramsey said. You need the process. Maya stopped walking. She turned slightly. Ramsey did not know she was listening. He continued, build it again. Natural point of aim. Don't muscle the stock. Accept the hold before it decays. Wind is half value from right to left near target. Trust it. Ellis reset. His breathing slowed. Ramsey stayed in the scope. Send it when it's true. Ellis pressed. The rifle cracked. Steel rang. For a second, Ellis stayed frozen behind the glass. Then he looked back stunned. Ramsey smiled. Not big. Not proud in the old way. Just glad. Good shot, he said. Maya watched him for one more beat. Then she turned away before he could see approval in her face. Chief Hale saw it anyway. By late afternoon, the team gathered for the final debrief. Their uniforms were dusty. Their notebooks full. their shoulders tired from the kind of training that reached past muscle and into character. Commander Voss asked for evaluations. Price spoke first. Wind calls improved once we stopped trying to sound certain. Harris added, follow-through changed the groups. Ellis looked at Ramsey, then said, spotter trust matters more than I thought. Voss nodded. Then he turned to Ramsey. The range seemed to hold its breath again, but differently now. Ramsey stepped forward. Chief Cross was right, he said. Maya looked at him. He faced the team, not just the commander. I treated respect like something rank or reputation should trigger. I didn't treat it like a standard I owed before knowing someone's resume. He paused. That made me dangerous in a way I didn't recognize. No one interrupted. Ramsey continued, yesterday, I offered my rifle to make her small. Today, she used the same range to make the team better. He turned to Maya. Thank you, Chief. The words were simple. This time, they were clean. Maya held his gaze. Then she nodded once. You're welcome, Lieutenant. It was the first thing she had given him that felt almost gentle. Not forgiveness exactly. Adore. The sun dipped lower, washing the range in amber light. Men began clearing rifles, stacking targets, collecting brass. Not because they were told. Because the work needed doing. Ramsey picked up the tape again. Ellis joined him. Then Price. Then the others. Maya stood back as the team moved downrange together. Chief Hale came beside her. Looks like they learned. Maya watched Ramsey kneel at lane 7, showing Ellis how to tape a corner loose enough to move, firm enough to hold. Some of them, she said. Hale looked at her. And Ramsey? Maya was quiet for a moment. At the far berm, Ramsey checked the bracket bolt one more time before walking away. Maya's expression did not change, but her voice softened by a degree. He stopped performing. Hale nodded. For Maya Cross, that was close to praise. And on that range, after everything that had happened, it was enough. By the third morning, no one called Maya Cross range support. No one called her target girl. No one asked why she was there. When she walked onto the firing line before sunrise, the team was already moving. Targets had been carried downrange. Frames checked. Chains tightened. Backing boards replaced where the wind had torn them overnight. Brass from the previous day had been collected into metal buckets beside the benches. Not perfectly, but honestly, that mattered more. Lieutenant Cole Ramsey stood at lane 7 with Petty Officer Ellis, adjusting a paper target at the bottom corner. He pulled the tape loose, reset it, then pressed it flat with his thumb. Loose enough to move, Ellis said. Ramsey finished the corner. Firm enough to hold. Maya heard it from 30 yards away. She did not smile. But Chief Hale, standing beside the ammunition table, saw the small shift in her eyes. For Maya, that was enough. Commander Voss arrived a few minutes later with no folder in his hand. No ceremony. No dramatic reveal. Just a black coffee, a weathered cap, and the look of a man who already knew the evaluation had become larger than marksmanship. He watched the team prepare the range without being told. Then he looked at Maya. They're early, he said. They're learning. That's not the same thing. No, Maya said. But it's a start. The final drill began at 0700. It was called a confidence course, though Maya had always disliked the name. Confidence was not the point. Confidence came and went with sleep, weather, pride, pain, and who happened to be watching. Standards lasted longer. She divided the team into pairs again, but this time she changed the conditions without warning. Unknown distance. Partial targets. Timed wind calls. Spotter corrections under pressure. No excuses accepted. No perfect conditions offered. The range became alive with controlled frustration. Rifles cracked. Bolts cycled. Spotters called impacts, misses, corrections. Men who had once mocked silence now listened for it. They learned that wind sometimes spoke softly. They learned that a missed shot carried information if pride did not bury it first. They learned that the person beside them could see what they could not. At lane 4, Harris missed twice and started to curse under his breath. Maya stopped behind him. Again, she said. Harris stiffened. Chief, I already know what I did. No, Maya said. You know you missed. That is not the same as knowing why. He went quiet. His spotter leaned back into the scope. They rebuilt the call. Found the shift. Corrected half value. The third shot rang steel. Harris stayed behind the rifle. This time, he did not celebrate too early. Maya moved on. At lane 7, Ramsey spotted for Ellis again. The younger operator had improved, but the final target was cruel, small, half-lit, with a crosswind that changed near the berm. Ellis missed his first shot low left. A day earlier, Ramsey might have corrected him too fast. Now he waited. He checked the dust, the flags, the shimmer. My call was short, Ramsey said. Wind picked up past 600. At a 10th. Same hold. Ellis nodded. Copy. He adjusted. Fired. Steel rang. Ramsey stayed in the scope. Impact. Good follow-through. Maya paused behind them. Ramsey did not look back for approval. That was when she knew the lesson had reached deeper than embarrassment. By late morning, the team gathered for the final run. One shooter. One spotter. One unknown target. One chance to call it clean. Commander Voss chose Ramsey to shoot. Maya chose Ellis to spot. The choice surprised everyone except Hale. Ramsey lowered himself behind the rifle. Ellis settled beside the spotting scope, nervous but steady. The rest of the team stood behind the line, watching in silence. Not the ugly silence from the first day. A different one. The kind soldiers give to work that deserves room. Maya stood behind Ramsey's right shoulder. Target, Voss called, left berm, low shadow, unknown distance. Ellis searched through the spotting scope. Got it, he said. Small steel. Partial cover. Ramsey adjusted behind the rifle. Distance? Ellis hesitated. No rangefinder. No help. He studied the target size, the berm markers, the heat shimmer, the angle of the light. 875, he said. Then corrected himself. No. 890. Maybe 895. Ramsey did not snap at him. He did not demand certainty. Call it. Ellis breathed. 890. Ramsey dialed. Wind moved across the range. Ellis watched the flags, then the dust at midline. Right to left. Half value near us. More near target. Hold left edge. Ramsey settled. Maya watched his hand. No rush. No performance. No need to win back a room that was no longer against him. Just process. Ellis leaned closer to the scope. Send it when true. The words were Ramsey's from the day before. Now they belonged to both of them. Ramsey exhaled halfway. Pressed. The rifle cracked. The pause felt long enough to hold every mistake he had made and every correction he had accepted. Then steel rang. Clean. The plate swung in the low shadow. No one cheered immediately. Ramsey stayed behind the rifle until the sight picture returned. Ellis kept his eye in the scope until the plate settled. Only then did the team let out the breath they had been holding. Commander Voss nodded once. Clear. Ramsey opened the bolt and sat back. Ellis looked at him, almost grinning. Ramsey held out a fist. Ellis tapped it. Small. Earned. Maya looked downrange at the swinging plate, then at the team. That is the standard, she said. Not the hit. They knew that now. The standard was the call. The trust. The patience. The absence of ego at the exact moment ego wanted to interfere. The final debrief happened under a pale afternoon sky. The team stood in a loose half-circle, dusty, tired, and quieter than they had been when the course began. The steel plates behind them moved faintly in the wind. The target boards were scarred with tape, paper, and proof. Commander Voss spoke first. You came here to improve marksmanship, he said. Some of you did. But marksmanship was never the only evaluation. His eyes moved across the group. The rifle shows your habits faster than conversation does. It shows impatience, fear, pride, trust. It shows whether you can accept correction before failure becomes permanent. No one looked away. Then Voss turned to Maya. Chief Cross. Maya stepped forward. For a moment, she said nothing. She looked at Ramsey, then Ellis, then the rest of the team. Men who had laughed. Men who had stayed silent. Men who had learned. Men who still had more learning ahead of them. The first day, she said, I listened to you decide who I was. Ramsey lowered his eyes briefly. Maya continued, that is dangerous. Not because I needed your approval. Because a team that judges before it observes will miss threats, miss talent, and miss the truth standing close enough to help. The wind moved across the line. No one earns respect by demanding it, she said. But no one should have to prove they're human before receiving it. The words settled over the range. Not soft. Not loud. Final. She looked toward Lane 7. A rifle does not care about your pride. Neither does the mission. The only thing that matters is whether you do the work cleanly, whether you protect the person beside you, and whether you stay honest when the shot goes wrong. Ramsey stepped forward. Chief. Maya turned to him. He stood at attention, but there was nothing theatrical in it now. I owe you more than an apology, he said. I owe the team better conduct. Maya waited. Ramsey looked at the others. And I owe the next person I don't recognize the respect I should have given first. The team stood still. Maya held his gaze. Then pay it forward, she said. Yes, Chief. She nodded once. That was all. No hug. No speech about redemption. No easy ending wrapped in applause. Just a soldier accepting correction and a teacher letting the lesson stand. As the team began clearing the range, Ramsey did not walk to his rifle first. He walked to the target rack. Ellis joined him. Then Price. Then Harris. One by one, the others followed. They pulled paper, checked bolts, collected brass, carried frames back together. Maya watched from the firing line. Chief Hale came to stand beside her. You think they'll remember? Maya looked at Ramsey kneeling by Lane 7, showing a younger operator how to check the bracket before taping the target. Not all of it, she said. Hale glanced at her. That bother you? No, why not? Maya picked up one of the spent casings from the bench. It was from Ramsey's final shot. Warm once. Empty now. Evidence of a process done correctly. Because they don't need to remember me, she said. They need to remember the standard. Hale was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. Downrange, Ramsey finished securing the last frame. He looked back once toward Maya, not for approval, not for rescue, not to see if she had forgiven him. Just to acknowledge the person he had failed to see. Maya gave him a single nod. He returned it. The sun dropped behind the berm, throwing the whole range into long shadow. The steel plates cooled. The flag slowed. The noise of the day faded into the low hum of the base beyond the fence. By tomorrow, new shooters would arrive. New targets would go up. New mistakes would appear on clean paper. And someone, somewhere, would look at a quiet woman doing ordinary work and think they knew the whole story. But on that range, with that team, the lesson had been written in dust, brass, and silence. Respect was not demanded. It was earned. And sometimes, the person who taught it was the one everyone mistook for standing in the background.